A community mourning the 5 lives lost to senseless violence. What we're learning as the identities of the Club Q victims are revealed. Plus, we'll tell you how you can help those in need and the LGBTQ organizations on the ground in Colorado Springs. And LGBTQ Task Force Executive Director Kiara Johnson is here to talk about trauma and how to combat anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. That's all coming up on Advocate Today. Welcome to Advocate Today. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist, and thank you for joining me. The identities of the 5 people killed at Club Q in Colorado Springs have been released, and we're learning more about them. Authorities have identified Daniel Aston, Raymond Green Vance, Kelly Loving, Ashley Poe, and Derek Rump. Ashley Poe was a mother with a large family, including many nieces and nephews. Her family says she had a huge heart, showcased by her work at a nonprofit that helps find homes for foster children. Daniel Aston was 28 years old. According to the Denver Post, he moved to Colorado Springs 2 years ago to be closer to his parents. He was a supervisor at the bar. Daniel's coworkers said he helped foster a positive culture at the club. Derek Rump found a community there. He was a bartender at Club Q. The other 2 victims who were killed were Raymond Green Vance and Kelly Loving. The gunman is now facing murder and hate crimes charges. GLAAD President and CEO Sarah Kate Ellis says learning the names of the victims helps humanize them. The advocacy organization is also on the ground in Colorado Springs, providing care and resources to the LGBTQ community.
To me, it confirmed what we thought, which is that, there are real people behind these murders and this attack, and it just made it real. I think that you think of people, but you don't know their names, and now you know their names, their pronouns, and it made it just more devastating, honestly. I have to say, I was the president and CEO of GLAAD during the Pulse shooting as well. I was down on the ground in Florida, and it felt very different, honestly. It felt that the media coverage wasn't including LGBTQ, wasn't talking about a possible hate crime. I feel like the media coverage has been much more thorough and inclusive this time, and I feel like the team on the ground in Colorado Springs, I have a team from GLAAD there right now working with everyone on the ground, has been really thoughtful. I thought what stood out to me too was because there has been tension and continues to be between law enforcement and the LGBTQ community. And she made a really specific point to say that isn't the case here, that there isn't tension between the community and law enforcement.
The LGBTQ community has seen a dramatic rise in hate speech and crimes in recent years. For more on this and how the community is reacting to the Club Q shooting, I spoke with National LGBTQ Task Force Executive Director Kiara Johnson. As someone of the leader of an organization for marginalized people, what are the first steps that you think about in light of a tragedy like this?
I think the first thing that we have to have on our hearts and our minds is how do we support those most impacted at the time, right? So thinking about survivors, thinking about those who risked their own lives to help, thinking about the loved ones who lost people, right, during the tragedy. And so I think first and foremost, it's got to be how do we help, right, meet the needs, right, and comfort a community that is enduring so much pain and so much trauma. And then I think we have to really deal with the trauma that we're enduring as an entire movement, right, as an entire community, and that's the next step.
Yeah, that's a big one. And your statement actually, it so resonated with me because I was talking about this very thing the other day, the idea of hate being fomented by anti-LGBTQ politicians, people who call us groomers, who say that drag queen story hour is the devil, and then yet you get a statement from Lauren Boebert, who's in Colorado, and
Right.
and those dots are connected. Would you talk a little bit further about that and this rhetoric that is frankly killing people?
I mean, I think you've said it, and our people feel it. We feel it every day. You can't say our hearts and our minds, our thoughts and our prayers are with you. This is such a tragedy when these tragedies are the fruit
Yeah.
of the violence perpetuated, the anti LGBTQ legislation, the cultural invisibilizing, if you will, of our community. If you take away spaces for young people to be able to be themselves, if you take away the language that they use to affirm, right, and acknowledge who they are, if you make it okay, right, to discriminate, right, at the state and federal level, why do we think that that kind of dehumanization doesn't yield violence? And you don't get to talk about your thoughts and prayers when that's what you grew, when that's what you grew.
Yeah, it's a wild cognitive dissonance. Um, and you touched on it before we actually came on air. You touched on the fact that this isn't isolated. You've got Brittany Griner's jersey behind you. Uh, would you talk about the ramped up violence against LGBTQ plus people in this country and all over the world?
Absolutely. We've seen attempts to pass non-discrimination at the state and federal level. We've seen, attempts to pass, gun violence laws, anti-violence laws, and yet people sitting in Congress, conservatives sitting in Congress, keep putting up barriers. And this jersey for me and for so many of us is a reminder that these acts of violence that are happening within, right, our communities are not one-offs, right? It is happening across the country. They're ramping up, and we're experiencing it on an international level. Queer people of color, queer women, trans and non-binary folks are their bodies are on the line. Their sanity is on the line. We know we know when young people don't have a safe place to go that they are more likely to attempt suicide. We know that. So why are we taking the safe spaces away if the intention isn't to harm or end a young queer person's life?
Right.
We know what the solution to that is.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Gay bars, queer bars, especially for so many of us, even of a certain age, that was our first queer community. It was our first experience with feeling okay. And so an attack on a club like this is doubly horrifying. Would you chat about that a little bit, please? The removal of that kind of safe space.
Again, I think it's all related, right?
Yeah.
So many of us in the community, right, going into these bars, going into these clubs, it was the 1 hour or the 1 3 hour or the 1 6 hour. I didn't do 6 hours. I know some people roll like that. But for that 6 hours out of the week, out of the month, out of the year, you could not worry, you could exhale, you could celebrate yourself and those in your community, you could just be free. But it was also a place where we sought comfort, right, where we got advice, where we learned what the needs were for our communities.
Thank you to Kiara for stopping by. For more resources during these difficult times, head to thetaskforce.org. The Colorado Healing Fund has been activated in response to the Club Q tragedy. Donations help support the survivors and families of the violence. For more information or to make a donation, go to coloradohealingfund.org. Click on the Support Colorado Healing Fund button. And thank you for joining me for this Advocate today. TheAdvocateChannel.com is available now. Head there for more content and coverage that advocates for you. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist. I'll see you next time.